Okay.
Sweet. Okay, tight for the leg room.
Tight
Do
for
we
the
need
leg
to
room.
shuffle out the table? Are we good?
No, that's perfect.
Okay, this is perfect. Okay, rock and roll. This is happening. Oh my goodness. This is so exciting, guys. Welcome back. Okay, we're going to do that again. Okay. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another exciting and inspiring episode of On Location with Zara. I'm your host, Zara Durrani. I'm so excited to be here on my balcony and bring this special episode to you today. Our show is produced with the support of Tell a Story Hive, and the reason why today's episode is so special is all through this season, for the last 9 months we've been filming, you've heard me reference to Julian behind the camera, Julian off camera. You know, there's my camera operator, Julian. And I thought, how cool would it be that you would get to hear from Julian himself. I have had the opportunity of working with Julian before, prior to working together on this show. I loved his work as a photographer, as a camera operator. We first worked together with Life in Salvazar over a decade ago. And then we reconnected at an event last year, and I knew we had to work together on a project because not only was I a fan of his work, it's his energy that he brings to each set, to each location, to each guest. Because when you're working on a film production, on a show, not only is it important that the person that you're working with is talented, it is about the energy they bring to you. And especially when I'm working on camera, it's very important for me to feel supported, and I'm just so grateful to have had this opportunity to work with Julian over these last 9 months, and I hope we're going to work together on many more projects. And he's been a rock. He's just, wonderful young man, so talented, and not only his energy is beautiful, not only his work is amazing, he inspires me through his travels, through his adventures, how he shows up in his life for himself, for his partner. Julian Fok, thank you so much for joining
Zara,
me.
thank you so much.
So glad
It was
you're
amazing.
here.
And you speak so kindly, but I think the support that I feel from you and working together this past 9 months has just really flown by. And we've had so many great experiences, and I feel like the break that we had, we worked together so long ago, as you mentioned, but the break that we had, we grew in separate directions, but to come back and see how much we've grown has been amazing.
Completely. And I reference to you and your work ethic and who you are and what you bring to the table. And to be quite honest, in my opinion, I don't think that is something that someone can learn in film school, or in photography school or anything. It's who you are. So like we do with all of our guests, instead of looking to the future first, I want to talk a bit about your journey. And I received your bio, but I want the audience to hear about your journey. Did you always know that you wanted to capture moments, capture people, capture nature? Because you have such a beautiful eye. I love your travel photos because there's something truly cinematic about your work.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I kind of fell into photography in a way backwards. I started off when I was about 5 years old, actually, and it was something that I was fascinated by cameras and the science behind it, how you could capture a moment, how you could travel to the world and bring back memories. And it was something that I picked up when I was really young, but it wasn't something that I thought could be a career. Growing up as a Chinese family, and my mom was like, you gotta go to sciences, you gotta be a doctor. And so I kind of focused on studies through my young adult life, and it was actually grade 12 when I really was interested in picking up photography again. But at the time, I just wanted to buy a point and shoot camera. I wasn't thinking of taking anything seriously or going to film school or anything like that. But I reached out to my uncle, who's my brother, and he suggested that if I wanted to take it seriously, that I should save up and buy a digital SLR. And at the time, it was very expensive. I wasn't working at the time, but I committed to getting a part-time job, and I wanted to save up and buy this camera. And that really just set me on a trajectory where, I was a very shy kid growing up. I'm still quite shy and introverted, but I've learned to grow out of it. But the camera really helped me go to events, meet people, make friends on social media, and that was really what kickstarted it. And I took the camera with me to university where I studied kinesiology, and the camera allowed me to go to different events and meet people. And people would ask me like, hey, like we'd love to get a headshot or a group photo, and I'd be like, yeah, sure. Like I was just trying to make friends at that point. But then people started to ask me, hey, could you do a headshot? How much would you charge? And I didn't really think anything of it, but doing the sciences degree, I was like, I think I like this lifestyle more than going into research or going into physical therapy or something like that. But it was really the lifestyle that grabbed me. And looking back, photography has been this thing that I realized my memory is actually very poor. And if I didn't have these photographs, there's a lot of things, travel being one of the things, I wouldn't even remember getting these places or something like that.
And when did the travel bug set in? Because since of course I've known you for much longer, but us working together on location with Zara, I have to say, you guys, you can be so, it's not often that you get blessed with a great teammate who, Julian was in a different time zone, jet lag, traveling, and he's in his hotel room editing. Editing not just one episode, but we had like 4 or 5 episodes just so we matched, met the deadline. And he's in his hotel room, and I know those are the kind of things that I normally do. I normally don't really meet many other people with the same sort of vision or work ethic, and I think it's that makes me go like, I can't wait for us to work on more projects together, because I feel like such a good fit, like yin and yang, because we're very different, but as teammates, as working on projects together, that's why it touches. I speak so well, and I'm not getting paid by Julian to say this. I'm just putting that out there. But I want you to know, because I think it's so important to acknowledge that when you have like a good teammate, someone who's working with you, because then you grow together. So let's talk a bit about traveling. Like, when did the travel bug set in? Because over the last 9 months, you've traveled almost every month. Like, whether it is going down to Washington or like Japan or like New York or Europe, you're like, and that's something I find truly fascinating.
I don't know when the travel bug hit me, but I think it's been passed down from my parents. I've been very blessed to, have traveled with my parents as a young kid, and either with my mom or my dad. They happened to separate when I was really young. I would go on these trips with them, and I got to see like a quick snippet of basically Eastern Canada. I did a road trip with my dad. We went on a Greyhound, and I got to experience.
When you were a kid.
When I was a kid, from like Ontario, which is where I was born, to Prince Edward Island, which was I'm very blessed to see that part of Canada, and there's just so much of Canada that I still want to explore. To another trip with my mom, where we went to 4 different countries in Europe, and it was just like a tour group kind of thing. And I think that's where the bug came from, was my parents, and further beyond that would be my grandparents. But for me now, it's about, I guess it is a little bit of finding novelty. I find we're blessed with beautiful British Columbia, and I find it's very nice to have BC as a backdrop for photography, but to keep inspired, to find different cultures, different ways of thinking, that's what inspires me to travel. And for me, I'm trying to find a balance between setting my roots here, doing what I can while having constraints of, for example, COVID. You just have to work with what you have. But now that things have started to change, I kind of had to reassess my business, my photography, during COVID times. And one of the things that a friend of mine asked me, like, what would be your dream gig with photography? And I took a moment, and it was travel. If I could get paid to travel and continue to do photography, to share different cultures, inspire other people to see things from a different point of view, that's really what has solidified my goals in the past couple of years. And so as you mentioned, Japan has been just a completely different way of looking at things. I've always had a fascination with Japan ever since I was a kid. My dad went to Japan for a couple of years, and I always wanted to go visit. It never panned out. But now I'm fulfilling that that dream that I had as a kid, and getting to explore Japan. And in a way, it's quite sad because it's a country in decline. There's more people wearing adult diapers than there are baby diapers. Like it's a really aging population. And for me, I'm visiting these 150-year-old soy sauce factories that are done the old school way. And this gentleman who's been doing it for his whole life, he has no child who wants to continue on the family practice. And so what's going to happen to that? And so for me, it's going to these places, tasting the foods, but also documenting and sharing those stories, because I think it's something that's fleeting and it's passive. Celebrating it, but also letting it go.
That's beautiful, and I did not know that. Thank you for sharing. So tell me a bit about your work, because your work has a very unique flair. It's like I said earlier, it's very cinematic. When I look at your photos, I feel like I can't think of that filmmaker right now. He had this in his work. My mind is just going blank. I think they did a movie, something about a hotel, and the colors are very.
Wes Anderson?
Yes.
Yeah. Redwood Festival.
Yes.
Yeah.
One
of my favorite films.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I look at like your pictures and your work, it's very unique, and it's like even most recently, like you were going to some islands and you were in your cute little vehicle, like traveling and taking all these. It's not just like a photo, and I think it's the way you edit, the way you capture the photos. It seems to have so much more heart. So how did you create that? How did you decide that, okay, I want the audience to look at my photo and get this feeling? Like, where did that inspiration come from, and whose work are you inspired by as a photographer?
That's a good question. It's something that has developed over time, unintended. When I first started off with photography, it wasn't something that I was really thinking about. I wasn't thinking about the message or the meaning or the feeling. And, I think social media, for better or for worse, it's in a way trained me in a poor way of, okay, what's going to get the likes? What's trending? What's now the music that people like to listen to for reels? It's like, where's your unique flavor if you're just following what everyone else is doing? And I get it, it's part of a game, you want some of those clicks, you want, that notoriety and whatnot. But I think the big switch for me has been stopping to care so much about what people think, which is very hard, but I think that's been the most helpful part of creating this work that I care about, because in the past I was just creating work that what other people like, and for a commercial job that makes sense. The client's gonna say like, hey, we want it to look like this, and you gotta make them happy. But if it's my own expression, if it's my own Instagram page, who cares? As long as it's not hurting anyone, as long as it's fulfilling what I want to fulfill. That's kind of the direction I'm taking. And one of the things that I really, have picked up on is, in terms of cinematic look, I find I haven't really had a good learning or education in photography. I was pretty much self-taught this whole time. And a lot of my inspiration comes from movies. Wes Anderson's actually one of my favorite filmmakers.
So I picked that right.
Yeah. And Quentin Tarantino is another one. But I find I see movies in frames. And so, I'll have, in a way, I kind of have a photographic memory like that, where, a picture or an image from one of these films I'll just remember. And when I'm in the field, when I'm in Japan, for I'll have just this calling of like, oh, this is how I want to film this shot, and you know, I don't really consciously realize where it's coming from, but it is coming from all the things that I'm consuming. So now that I'm actually starting to learn photography in Japan, we'll talk about that in a bit, but essentially I'm learning from other photographers who have already created the path, or created their own paths. And so now that I'm learning how they've done it, I can distill from that, you know, what I want out of photography.
That's beautiful. It sounds like a very intuitive process. It made me think a bit of totally different, but Brian Adams, for example, doesn't know how to read music or anything like that, but he's like writing songs. Oh yes. And there's a lot of I remember I wrote a book as a ghostwriter, and I had to research interesting stories of like individuals that people would know. And again, my brain, this beautiful opera singer, he's blind, from Italy, from Milan, Andrea Bocelli.
Okay.
So he studied to be a lawyer, and he even won a case in the court. But what really made his heart sing was singing. And so basically what you're describing to me is you get visions. Like one of my friends is a costume designer, and she's always, for as long as I know, been passionate, Claudia, been passionate about fashion and style and making women look beautiful. And what she would say is that when she sees someone, she gets images in her mind of like how she thinks they should look. So because when I view your photos, I get feelings, you know, it's like from your travels, or whether it's a paid job, but normally from your travels, like your photos from like when you're around the world, I imagine that to be from like a movie, you know, it's not just a photo, but it's from a movie. That sort of vibe that I get, that it takes me in where I'm curious about, okay, what else happened? What am I seeing in this photo that is like, what is the story behind it? You know, it seems to have more of a story, because I think photos should have, like a great photo should have like a feeling to it, that it's not just like a photo of like a beautiful mountain or a pretty girl or whatever, or a child, but what emotions is it invoking? I think that is a difference between just like a person with a camera to an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something I learned recently from my trip to Japan was from one of my mentors, Dr. Erickson, and he was talking about how to add meaning or feeling to an image. And yeah, I'm definitely going to paraphrase, but to add feeling to whatever you're doing expression-wise, you know, it could be painting, it could be photography, it could be dance, is you have to feel first. If you don't connect with your own emotions, then what you're performing is robotic, and it's, you know, maybe good scales, but like, what's the emotion of it? You know, it should flow, it should come out naturally. And I feel like that's where, when you have a better connection with actually what you are feeling in the moment, then the expression can be subtle, it can be meaningful only to you, but you know, it can also connect with somebody else. And it might be a totally different feeling or emotion or meaning, but you know, we're all humans, we all kind of go through similar highs and lows, and by tapping into it, you subconsciously or maybe consciously put it into an image. And that's something that I've learned to do is it's a need now to let this voice out. And you know, I could be on social media and be like, I'm feeling really bad today, and you know, just be very vocal about it, be very blunt about it, or I can share an image that it gets that off my chest, but I didn't have to actually say those words. It's meaningful there, and if you're in tune with it, then you'll get what I'm trying to say. But if not, it's a pretty good.
So let's talk bit about, your journey, because you've been working as a freelance photographer for quite some time, and then last year when I reconnected with you at East by Northwest, you were doing photos and some video content. Working as an artist, working as a freelance professional, it's a journey. We don't know where the work is coming from. It's a lot of trusting the universe, trusting and having faith in our own talent and abilities. And part of that is luck, but it's also meeting opportunity. And like I said earlier, like I know in film and television, people want to work with people they like working with. Because especially when you're working long days, and if a project's gonna take you months on end like ours did, like I feel like so blessed that we were working together. We had never really worked in the capacity that we worked on location with Zara, but I feel like through that project a friendship came out of that. Yet at the same time I really got to see who you are as a person, and be like quite often we would be on my gratitude list, and I would tell my other friends like this person that I'm working with, and my friend who interviewed whose documentary that I was working on, and I was just saying, okay, how can we bring Julian onto this project? What can we do? So my question is, how has the journey been like for you as a freelancer? And what have been some of the challenges, and then what have been some of the wins that you've had? Because of course being a freelancer, not having a salaried job with benefits, we have many benefits because we're doing this on like a Wednesday afternoon, but then when things like COVID happen, it's people who are salaried, it's very different than for people like us. So I would love to hear how that journey has been over the last many years, and when did you decide to fully focus on photography and then till now? I know that's a big question, but
I'll try to
diving
keep all
into
those
that.
pieces.
Yeah.
In terms of challenges, the big one that I've only been able to see over time, it's been about 13 years that I've been doing freelance full time. And
So around the time we met then?
Yeah, that's probably around when I started.
Okay.
And when I was first starting out, it was like, okay, I need to make this a living, right? I need to make X amount of dollars a year. I need to, get these clients. I need to, that. And okay, I was starting to get there. And then the next year's resolution comes back. Okay, all right, I gotta make more money. I gotta work for bigger clients. And I, okay, starting to get there. And then, I had a really good year, and I was like, I nailed it. I got it. I've made it. Now I'm gonna make bigger goals and make more money. And then that's when it doesn't really pan out. COVID happens, and in fact, first year of COVID was actually my best year. This happened randomly with that. People needed video. I was a videographer. But the next year of COVID, people are like, holy smokes, how long is this gonna last? We gotta take our budgets. Completely changed my business. And that really was a wake-up call in terms of questioning what success means to me. And that's been a big question that I've really pondered about. Initially it was how much money can I make, what clients I can work with. And those were good goals in the beginning. They helped me move towards what I needed in terms of stability and whatnot. But with the challenges of the economy, of just something happens, maybe you get injured and you can't do your work anymore. How do you adapt? And so for me, my version of success now is, I still have to make money to put food on the table and cover all my expenses, but what is the work that is meaningful to me, and what are the stories I want to tell, who are the people I want to work with, regardless of the money, and where can I build it up where, hey, maybe I'll do some jobs that I don't necessarily love doing, but can cover my bases so that I can focus on the things that I do well. And so that's how I film at different pockets. That as a freelancer has been very difficult because I think it's very easy to be, just hustling, and like it's a thrill to make more money and work for bigger clients, but at some point you might get let go. And
question that, what am I trying to do?
Question what you're trying to do, and question,
It can take the love away sometimes. It's like, for me, it's something I remember last time I ran into you. So wise, you're a few years younger than me, and Julian said to me, and he said, "That's great. You're so busy. What are you doing for self-care? Like, how are you relaxing?" And honestly, you asking me that question just made me go like, that's a great question. Because especially when the work we do is our passion, and when the work is happening, the projects are coming, and I think
that's a high.
it's a complete adventurous high. It's like climbing a mountain, and when you're at the bottom of the mountain, you're looking at the peak and you're imagining this is what it's gonna feel like when I get to the peak, and you get to the peak and you're like, okay, well, how am I gonna get that contentment? So you want the bigger mountain, but then if all your energy is just going into that, like the last couple of days I've been going down to the beach, watching the sunset, like this may sound so simple for someone, right? Like, but in my work, in my industry, like I'm working on several different TV shows, working as an actor, working as a content creator, have a dog and a cat, living by myself, and then managing your time, eating well, working out, sleeping. It's a lot. It can be a lot, and then you can go through the point of like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And I think moments like COVID like force us to reflect. Like, why am I doing this? But I feel like the fact that, can you talk about your age? I forget how old you are.
Yeah, I'm 33.
Oh my god, Julian's got such a good head on your shoulders. 33. Almost 10 years younger than me. What?
Yeah.
But very, very mature. Old soul. So talk to me, because you're doing photo and you're doing video. And obviously you're really, really good at video because people can see your show. Like, I get a lot of compliments on the way that it's shot, the way that it's filmed, the work that you're doing. And, it just comes back to, like, I feel like it's the way that you're showing up here, but I think it's also how you have your passions and how you care for yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I've worked on other shows, and there's another camera operator who's so lovely, like great in technical work. But it's the attitude and the energy that you're bringing to set, that you're bringing with your client, that you're bringing with the talent on camera. If your attitude is rotten, you could be the best person at your job, but if people are not enjoying working with you, it just affects everyone around you. So there's obviously something that you're doing right, that I would love to hear, that I'm sure someone who's not a photographer could be in anything. Because obviously there's some element of self-care that you're doing that I would love to talk about.
Yeah, I think the way that I find self-care and how I go off stage, how I recenter myself, is my martial arts. I've been practicing martial arts for about the same time that I've been a freelance photographer, actually. And it's Kung Fu, it's Chinese martial arts, and it's a combination of what would look like Tai Chi to most people, and elements of self-defense, like Jeet Kune Do that Bruce Lee invented, and also philosophies like Taoism. And for me, the form of expression of martial arts that I learned is called Yue Ba Fa, or Cantonese Lo Fa Ba Fa. And that translates to 6 harmonies and 8 flows, which is a very beautiful name for martial arts. And essentially, there's different elements of intent and passion and holding who you are, and that is our definition of achieve or win or aircraft. And for me, it's an alignment of what is your intent, what is your purpose, what is your passion, what is your physical expression in the real world. It can be verbal, it can be movement, it can be imagery. And when you have all those things in alignment, it all comes back to what your purpose is. And so you can be tired, you can have a horrible day, but if your intent is to do great work and to put a smile on your face and other people's face, then it doesn't really matter how tired you are, and it doesn't really matter how difficult somebody else is. You come back to what your intent is, and what you want out of it will naturally come. So with martial arts, it's been something that's always been able to ground me back in terms of, okay, stuff's breaking, everything is falling apart, but what can I do? What resources do I have? What training do I have? And can we figure this all out? So I wouldn't have gotten through COVID if it wasn't for martial arts.
It's the self-care, the physical component, but also the spiritual and internal training the mind, which is so important. Yeah, I feel like that's the consistency in your energy and how you showed up. I know there were a few days, I think there were about 2 days, but one in particular, I think there were 2 interviews, and one in particular that I was like, I was very nervous, and Julian came in and he's just like, okay, Preet, what do you need? You're just, yeah, and we were just on top of everything, and I just can't speak highly of who you are as a human being, as an artist, as a photographer, as a videographer, and what you're bringing to the table. And I feel like anyone who goes out to work with you, they're lucky to have you on their team, because I think the reason why I'm able to acknowledge this so much is because I've had opposite experiences. So when you have someone who is amazing, who is anticipating your needs, who's just there, and I'm the type of person who really believes in, if I see something positive in someone, verbalize it. Don't hold it back, because we don't know that person needs to hear it, and I guess that must be one of my love languages, but it's like with my friends or people, like I just feel like I'm very emotive like that, and to acknowledge and appreciate, because it's that, when you're putting that positive energy into the world, it's going to come back to you, and you're focusing on that versus if you're focusing on someone's negative. So tell me about, Japan, because in the last couple of months, so I think the last half of the year, you started learning Japanese, you've taken a few trips to Japan, you were just there, you had an incredible time. So for people watching right now, what exactly are you doing in Japan? This is a big, I also see this like little father and son type of story, like your dad used to travel to Japan, and now you're doing that, and you're working there, and you're working across the world, and you're almost like the hybrid of like East and West, like making those connections.
Yeah, so Japan was almost it was a dream place that I've always wanted to go to, as mentioned, because of my dad. It was actually 2016 when I first went to Japan by myself. It was my second solo trip that I ever did by myself. And, it was somewhere where I knew it'd be very safe, it'd be beautiful, and I was always interested in Japanese culture and food and whatnot. And it was actually an escape for me, which brought me to Japan. I was trying to get away from some stuff here, and I just needed to get the heck out of Vancouver. So I went to Japan, and I think.
Did you have a plan, itinerary of I'm gonna go here, or I'm just gonna show up in Tokyo and then decide, and this is the budget I have?
I literally had the first nights hostel booked, and that was it for a month.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I let the universe kind of
Amazing.
let me go where I want to go. I barely do any research because I want these experiences to come naturally.
That's
I just
beautiful.
try to wander.
Did your parents travel like that, or that's just the way?
I have no idea. I don't think so. I think they like structure and having an idea of where they're going to go and
May
checking
I
the
ask where this
boxes.
came from? Because it's a lot of trusting in the universe. Like I did that in Paris. Like people thought I was crazy, and I wanted it to be like an experiment to see what is my energy, and if I believe in energy, then the universe must come and meet me with that energy. So the way we're traveling, we really just sort of like, it's almost like, you're jumping off the cliff and being like trusting of the wings, and that is the life of an artist, is really like having that trust. So how long have you been traveling like that, and how did that, was it the situation that you were in coming out of and then traveling?
I think it was rebelliousness of like, I'm just tired of structure and fitting to boxes. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go and follow my nose and see where I feel like going. If I want to spend an extra night here, I can. If I like this hostel, I can book another night. If I don't, I can book a different one. And I just like that freedom.
It's a lot of like being in touch with your body, with your vessel, and almost, I don't want to use the word forcing, but almost tuning into how are you feeling. Like something you said earlier about what you learned from your mentor is that if you're not feeling, you can't bring that into your work. So it's almost you're challenging yourself to feel and then go with that instead of making it such an intellectual, like 2 days in Tokyo and then we're gonna take the train over to Osaka and we're gonna,
Yeah, there was goals in mind. I wanted to. I needed to check the boxes. It was my first time going. I needed to see different places, but I also just wanted to see what Japan had to offer. One of the boxes that I really wanted to check off was to climb Mount Fuji. And back in 2016, it was actually the shoulder season where you're not supposed to climb Mount Fuji. But one thing led to another, and I climbed Mount Fuji.
And were you prepped gear-wise to climb?
Yeah, I brought gear. I had done some mountaineering at that point, but Mount Fuji I think is 5,300 meters in elevation, which is quite high. Whistler Mountain, in our backyard is about 2,000 meters.
Oh wow.
So the air is much thinner up there, and that I wasn't ready for. But my fitness helped me out through that. But
and how long did it take?
it was an overnight one.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was by myself, so it's one of those kind of moments in life where you challenge yourself and you have this goal and you set out and you go do it. And just the experiences of that trip had led me to want to go visit again. And so what has led me to go back is my mentor now, so not Brett that I just mentioned earlier, but George Namechi, who I heard about through a friend of a friend, and he's a photographer in Japan, but he's also half Vancouverite, half Japanese. So we have some mutual friends, and I just reached out to him on Instagram essentially. He had no idea who I was, but I reached out to him, and he had mentioned he does workshops in Japan with National Geographic photographers,
Wow.
just legendary photographers who only work with him, who will travel to Japan and do a workshop
No way.
with 8 people.
So how did you hear his name? Like how did you?
Actually through my therapist.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing.
So it was actually my therapist who is, I'm pretty sure I can say this, high school friends with George.
Okay.
I won't say who my therapist is for
Okay.
that, but yeah, basically I was in therapy one day and I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing with photography. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. And my therapist was like, yeah, why don't you have a look at this guy? He seems to know how to make it work. And so I started to look at his journey and research George. And one day, I was DMing George, and he's like, yeah, I'm doing these workshops in Japan. It's waterfalls, martial artists, and mountains.
This is all the things you
Yeah,
love.
and it
Oh
was
my
with
goodness.
with Michael Clark, who's a world-renowned photographer, Nat Geo, Red Bull, like works with the best art, like the
How
best.
long ago was this?
This was in October 2023. So
Just like,
just
when
7
we
months
started
ago,
working.
around
Oh
there.
my goodness.
So that's when I was
But
like,
it took courage because so many times your inner critic can hold you back. And I want to thank you so much for sharing also about seeing a therapist and asking for that guidance and support because so many of us need that extra support. And like I can have moments of like currently I don't have a therapist at the moment, but it's like I saw one for like about 2 years and during COVID, like on a weekly basis, and it's just that inner cleansing that can happen, and and for men to also talk about, and also artists, for us to talk about, we need that extra support. Like it's almost like having that pillow, or like where you can go and be like, I don't have it all together. Like I'm not perfect, and on the outside, social media, everyone can think, oh my God, your life is perfect and I'm jealous of you. Like I get comments like that all the time. But so many times, like the idea of where I think I should be and where I am.
Expectations.
Yes, yeah.
And having a therapist, I think, is just not just, but for me, it's having somebody who's got my back. Like he's a professional I can trust with anything I don't have guidance on. I can go to him. And just to continue that thought was
sorry. Okay, I just want to ask you this just because of my personal experience. Like in the past, like if someone whose work I really admire or who I think like I would like to meet or whatever, my inner critic can get kicked in and be like, oh, do you really want to message them? Like, so did you have anything like that? Or you were like, no, I'm going to go ahead and message them. Was it like overnight? Because I know how I am and my fear and my inner critic can kick in. And I'm like, am I going to message? No, yes, no.
It's so funny because it comes full circle. You're mentioning this was around the time we were connected. And I can't remember who you were speaking to, wanting to reach out to, but you were reaching out to people for our show, and you had said something along the lines of like, this person's too big, but what's the worst that can happen? I can say no.
Yeah.
And I actually was inspired by you. And so I was like, what? I'm gonna reach out to this photographer.
Julian, you never told me that. Oh my God.
And like, what's the worst that you can say? It's like, you're silly. Just keep learning for a bit longer before you reach out. And of course not. Like, that's something that I've learned through you and have put into practice. That if you don't ask for what you really want, or if you don't put work into building it up to the point where you can ask for what you want, you kind of only have yourself to blame, because the world's not going to hand stuff to you on some platter. You have to grasp it.
And as we were there, and I think like something, I was wondering if I want to take this there or not, but I want to, and if you feel comfortable talking about it, also being racialized creatives, and living here and operating in our world, like it's different for us. We do have to work harder than people who are not, and I'm sure, like I'm not sure if you feel comfortable talking about some of the bigger brands that you've shared with me who've been your clients, and I was just so proud to hear like the work that you're doing and how you're traveling to New York, or I forget, you were in Germany and just different places. And I told someone, and I said, I want to be around people like you who sort of inspire me and open my eyes to the world. So I want to talk a little bit about, being a racialized creative and how that has impacted your journey as well.
Yeah, it's not something I often am faced with, but there are times when it comes up, and it seems like a hurdle that maybe somebody else might not have to deal with. But I try to find the silver lining in things.
Of course.
But I think on the bright side, things are improving, and especially where we live, things are a lot better than a lot of other places in the world. And so I try to find the positive in that. And, you know, in a way, we have to make up for lost time. And I think you said this on our show, but nobody's going to give us these opportunities. We have to take it. And, you know, there are platforms, there are communities that, you know, like East by Northwest and Vancouver Asian Film Festival, for example, which I've worked on for a number of years. These are the places that, you know, we have to foster and we have to continue and we have to put effort into because nobody's going to do it for us. But, you know, I don't mind being, you know, the only Chinese person in the room. As long as it's not for them to turn it off. Yeah. You know, I think for you and I, our work is why they hire us, and we happen to not be, we happen to be people of color. Yeah.
Thank you. That's so well said. I can't believe you're 33. That's crazy. Going back to you contacting your mentor on social media, on Instagram, and the journey that's taken you on, that you're now traveling to Japan. You were just there for a month, correct?
Got back a month ago.
And you're learning Japanese.
Yeah, it's I mean, you say I'm only 33, but I'm noticing how hard it is to learn a language at 33. I'm not the best at languages, but it's something that takes so much practice. And thankfully, I have a great reason to learn Japanese. So part of working with George Nobechi is he has a company in Japan called Nobechi Creative, where he brings in these photographers and filmmakers and do these workshops. And for me, how I reached out to him at first was I wanted to be a part of these workshops. And so I offered to do videography for him as a barter, essentially. His workshops are very exclusive and very limited.
And you suggested that.
I pitched it to him.
In person or social media?
This was on Instagram.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he was like, waterfalls, mountains.
Listen up, folks. Listen up, creatives.
And I was just like, oh my gosh. George,
did you say something like, would you be open to that?
Would you be open to me doing videography so that I could be a part of this workshop?
So did you like immediately send it, or did you like let me think about this, or you're like, okay, now it's the message is sent.
I pretty much was like, a message was sent, and he's like, yeah, that sounds great. I'll pay you enough for a flight from Vancouver. So basically, I got to travel a month to Japan, pretty much all expenses covered, and flight money. And I was working. I was doing videography every single day, but I was getting an education. I was learning from Michael Clark, and I didn't really realize this, but having a conversation with George over some sake, he was like, "What do you want out of photography?" And going back to my friend's question, the same thing. I was like, I want to travel. I want to keep working as a photographer, whatever way that looks like. And George said, "It's too vague. It's not concise enough. It's not quick enough." And kind of that was the moment where the sake was just right and everything kind of aligned. And I was like, George, I would really like to work with you. However I could make this work so that I can come back to Japan and travel and do photography, videography, learn from all these photographers, and network with people. He's like, okay, cool. You've checked all the boxes. You just need to go home and learn Japanese. So he's like,
this is here or in Japan?
We were having dinner in Japan, and then so I came back, signed up for Japanese lessons, and as of last month, I'm officially part of it too.
I'm so proud of you. It just really shows, the importance of perseverance, yet at the same time, taking the risk. Make the ask. Make the ask. I know, there's so many times I pitch myself for potential clients, or whether for content creation or for consulting or whatever, and every time, because we're artists, our ego, we all have it, is are they going to say yes or no? Does it mean I'm good enough? My work is good enough? No. Do I want to put myself out there? But, one of my coaches, Winston, who we've had on the show as well, he he said, the more you try, it's a numbers game. And you put yourself out in the uncomfortable zone. You took that risk. And now you're reaping the rewards, right? Like if you didn't do that, and you're doing so many exciting things, like you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Because the beauty, the gift is not gonna come from when we're just like, okay, I'm just gonna go with the flow, which is great. Like there's times for that, but we have to put ourselves out there. That inspires me. That's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to the whole martial arts thing is, what's my purpose, what's my intent, and then the actions just happen. Not to say that like they're not thought out, planned or strategized.
You've already put in the work.
But everything makes sense. Everything, as you say, you put in the work, and it's like alignment, and it just like, yep, that's fit, that fits. And for me, I feel it in my gut, and it's like, yep, this is, you're all in, and you make that move.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Your work ethic, I want to talk about that. Where does that come from? Your parents?
Guess so. I feel like perfectionism has been something that has been a balance in terms of, I need to do a good job so that the client's happy or I'm happy, but there has to be an end to it. You can edit forever, you can polish forever, but eventually you have to share it with the world. And there's actually a book I read a long time ago, Show Your Work. Show Your Work.
Okay.
It's a very short book, but
I'll have to look it up.
I highly recommend it to
it.
any
Yeah.
creator. But essentially, if you don't share your work, it doesn't really exist in the world. That could be social media, that could be putting up your work in the gallery. But I think part of my work ethic is I like to sprint and I don't like to marathon. So I can work really hard on a project, like you said, in Japan. It was like 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. and I'm just like, I'm gonna rip this out. And I know, I've done enough reps to know what is necessary, but it's like, I'm just gonna work really hard and then I can relax. And I think that's part of the topic of taking care of myself is if I sprint, I can find gaps to relax. And that's part of the beauty of freelancing is you can set your own schedule, you can say no to clients, you can price yourself out of clients. And I just find that I need those moments of rest so that I can sprint. That's the way that I like to work and actually work. And I find now if I can sprint and have end date, then it's going to be as good as it can get, and I can just put the perfectionist to bed a little bit because it's due when it's due. And I think it's part of it is you have to self-care those things as well.
And the self-care, like one of the things that I'm working on is like no evening messages, and I've really had to work so hard on that because I've had clients in the past. I used to live in Paris. Someone messaging me or calling me at 1 a.m. Paris time, and the people-pleasing part, like I would take that call because they were in Australia and I'm here. Our time zones were just so apart. Or even clients in Vancouver who on a Sunday evening are texting me at 9 o'clock at night. And part of that also includes that over time I will get like a personal number, so after a certain time, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, work phone is away. It's down. And we have to do that for our mental health and sanity. I want to talk about some of these fabulous brands who've been your clients, like Chanel, Omega, and Fujifilm. And what was it like having them as your clients? And then who would be like your dream clients?
So I think part of my business plan at first was when I first started out, it was like, okay, I was kind of doing all types of photography, picking any baby shoots or dog photography sessions. I was doing everything, and again, coming back to what I wanted out of photography was the lifestyle. And so my goal was, okay, I wanted to make a certain amount of money, but I wanted to work bigger projects that would pay more and, would end at a smaller kind of duration so that I could work really hard and then relax, go travel, blah, blah, blah. That was the dream. And so I had this idea of like, why don't I work for bigger companies that have bigger budgets? The responsibility, the stress is definitely going to be bigger. And how you get your foot in the door is another big challenge that I won't have enough time to get into today. But that was the goal. And so, I not arbitrarily, I thought about it. What were the brands I wanted to work for that aligned with my brand, my style, my whatever, and just my ambitions. And I definitely have a taste for nice things. So
Nice watch, by the way.
thank you. This is my souvenir from Japan. But I wanted to work for watch brands. Omega was one of the big ones. That was actually one of the highest goals I had, was to work for Omega. Through my journey as a watch collector, I got to be PR manager for Omega, or launching this watch group essentially. And I just reached out to him. I was like, you know what? I would love to do a shoot with your brands. And so I did a shoot with Longines. They sponsored me for one of my trips. They put a watch on me for my mountaineering.
Wow.
And so it was like, okay, if I can do Longines, why can't I do Omega?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the how do I push myself? And Chanel was one of those things where,
Epitome of like when you think of luxury brands.
yeah. I really wanted to work for these icons of fashion and cameras and watches and cars.
And also their work, like when you look at a Chanel ad or an Omega ad, whether it's print or video commercial, it's
There's a level.
storytelling.
There's a level.
And it's that emotion that you get from it. From the music to the camera work, the DP, to the models, what they're wearing and how they show. You go on a journey with them.
And one of those journeys was actually the goal to work with Fujifilm as well as Leica. So these cameras that are filming us right now are Leica SR2Ss.
Beautiful
for anyone who's
cameras.
interested. But one of my goals was to work with Leica, potentially be an ambassador for them. And that sort of came to fruition in February of this year, where they invited me over to Wetzlar, which is Germany, to their factory, and we got to experience the launch of the SL3. And that was one of those things where it's like for you, it'd probably be going to the Chanel factory and seeing how they make the bags. Like, to see these artisans create these cameras, in very small numbers, to see the attention to detail, to see the cast aluminum block come from a block, and then it slowly gets formed into a scene.
Was your heart just like,
I was like kid in a candy store. It was so much fun. And to get to meet these other YouTubers and camera reviewers and photographers that are working with Leica that I had known for a long time, watching their channels and watching their work. So to be in those rooms with those people was, for me, a sign that I'm going in the right direction, because it felt right. It wasn't like, okay, I checked the box, now what? Like, now I gotta, and it wasn't any of that. It just was like, okay, this feels.
you're on the right path. It sounds like over the last year, there's been big steps, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, because the amount of travel and the projects that you worked on, it seems very much on the upward trajectory.
It's funny because.
And you got engaged, so in personal and professional life.
That's right. Yeah, I think it takes highs. Well, it takes lows for highs to come. 2022 was my worst year in freelance photography. and it was coming off of a very big high of 2021, which was my best year. And there was nothing I could really control, and the writing was on the wall that things weren't improving anytime soon. And so that's where I had to just rewrite, throw up everything, and be like, okay, where am I? And I think something I've been learning recently with these photography workshops is questioning what you think you know. Because the more you actually learn, the more you realize you know very little or you know nothing. And being willing to let go of that has allowed me to just let go of what I thought success was and let me rewrite who I want to actually be. Because I think it's a very difficult thing for people to feel that they can do. But that's something that I think has helped me a lot in this past year. And as you said, this past year has been so different from what I've been doing in the past. And I don't know if anyone else will tell, but for me, I feel like my photography has changed a lot too. You know, if you go on my Instagram, I think if you were to scroll through, you can see a big leap in evolution in terms of what I'm sharing and what I'm creating. And I think that comes back to that what am I feeling, what am I wanting to express.
So what does success mean to you now?
I think I touched on it briefly, but it's where you have an alignment of what you want to be in the world. And I think that's different for everyone. And it's not even worth me sharing because that's something that's going to evolve. But as long as each day I wake up and I'm moving towards what I want to be in the world, to me that's success.
That's beautiful. I feel that's a great place for us to call it. How do you feel?
I feel great. Thank you.
Yeah. How does it feel to be in front of the camera? You're always behind the
Yeah, no,
camera.
I feel like, since this is one of the last streams of our show for the season, hopefully we'll have another one down the road. I feel like,
God willing. I know
yeah,
it's coming.
yeah, I think this has been such a great journey. It's been so fascinating to hear all the stories that you've shared and our guests have shared. It's been great to see all these locations that we've been to and being able to just basically have full access to these restaurants and stores that we've been able to get. And yeah, it's just been such a great journey. I've learned a lot technically with the gear that we're doing, and doing a live stream was something fairly new as well. So yeah, I think it's been a great full circle experience.
And for someone out there who's watching, who is feeling really inspired by you and the journey you've been on, and wants to get into photography or video or working in film and television, what advice would you give to them?
It sounds cliche, but the number one thing that I've learned through COVID is just not give up. There have been so many days where I've woken up and questioned. The imposter syndrome kicks in, and I question if I'm good enough, if I'm doing the wrong thing, if my time is up, and that's something that I can't necessarily control. I can't control when the phone rings for the next job, but what I can control is perseverance and working towards what my goals are, what I want to produce. And that doesn't have to be working with clients, working with, getting paid even, but to continually try to improve yourself in whatever you're doing and cling on to that. Don't let it go.
It's doing work that makes you come alive, connected to the heart. Julian Fok. Am I saying the last name right?
But I don't know if we're allowed to say it properly because it'll sound like a swear word.
Okay, got it. Copy that. Julian, it's been such a pleasure, and it feels so insightful for me to have this conversation with you, because even though we've had bits of this conversation, like while setting up, while tearing down, or it's like a lot of times it's like we have one shoot day, we do all of our interviews, by the time we're done, we're just kind of done, and then we're talking about edits and deadlines and all of that. So just sit here and have this conversation and dig deeper into your work, because I've also really admired, just the way you lead your life, the way you're doing your work, but also growing as an artist, as a photographer, as a videographer, the way you travel, but also the way you make time to enjoy life, because that's a balance that comes and goes for me. So I just really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm looking forward to working together on many projects together. I know it's going to happen. We're putting that out to the universe. Thank you so much, Julian. We'll obviously tag him because Julian is editing this and he's shooting this. Yes, exactly. And thank you all for watching, for tuning in, for supporting our show On Location with Zara Durrani, produced with the support of Telescurry High. We'll be uploading this, as well as on YouTube, but you'll watch it on Telesoptic Channel 9. And until next time, I'm your host, Zara Durrani. If you felt inspired, or if any of the conversation moved you in any way, please do get in touch. Julian will have his, Instagram handle, so will I. I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, I'm Zara Durrani, and I'll talk to you soon. Et voila!